Welcome back, Truth Seeker. This is an introductory video for people who are new to this work, on the fence, don't quite understand it. I want people to truly understand why this knowledge of Gematria or Gematria is so important and how it's essential for everyone who is seeking truth and who wants to expose the tyranny that is taking place in this world. And for me, this has been my personal quest since the day of September 11, 2001. And what I knew that day is obviously numbers are important to the cabal. That's why we're having a national emergency on 911. Couldn't be any more obvious. And from that day on, I noticed how numbers were routinely inserted into news stories that seemed arbitrary. What's the point of including this number? Why do I need to know this number? Just the other day, Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer appealed to have him stay in his $77 million mansion. Why do I need to know that the mansion's $77 million? And if you pay attention just day after day, numbers inserted in stories that are seemingly arbitrary, but they're not. And that's where this code of Gematria comes from. In the background, you can see there's a license plate up there that says, what is 47? That was the first number I ever caught on to. 47 this, 47 that, 47. Inserted in the news every single day for no apparent reason. But there is a reason. And we're going to get to that. And once upon a time, when I was looking for the meaning of numbers and what it was, and it took me a long time to find, I found some excerpts online from this book right here, The Secret Teaching of All Ages. And in this book, there's a lot of information here. It's not just about Gematria. It's about a million different esoteric things. It's by Manly P. Hall, who was a Freemason and who shared a lot of the secrets. But one of the chapters, the Kabbalah, the Secret Doctrine of Israel. In this chapter, he talks about Freemasonry, Kabbalah, and introduces Gematria. And he introduces two ciphers within the English language. He also talks about the relevance in Hebrew. But he says in English, there's two ciphers that there's relevance to. He says one's a little bit more important than the other. And one is just the alphabetic order. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, up to Z, the 26 letters, 26. And then the next cipher is just the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. So A is still 1, B is still 2, C is still 3. It changes when you get to J, the 10th letter. The numerology of 10 is 1 plus 0 is 1. So J is 1. K, the 11th letter. The numerology of 11 is 1 plus 1 is 2. L, the 12th letter. The numerology of 12 is 1 plus 2 is 3. So on, all the way up to Z, the 20 plus 6 is 8. Make each letter a single-digit number. But in the beginning of this chapter, it just begins. Albert Pike, who is the Freemason war general of the South, the only Confederate soldier who still has a statue up in D.C. And someday soon we're gonna be in D.C. and we're gonna be educating people at the Albert Pike statue about what's all encoded into that statue, and why he's the only Confederate remaining, because he was a big Mason in Washington D.C.'s Mason town. But anyway, he writes, Albert Pike, quoting from Transcendental Magic, thus sums up the importance of Kabbalism as a key to Masonic esotericism. I can't read or pronounce right now, I'm sorry. I don't get enough sleep. Anyway, one is filled with admiration on penetrating into the sanctuary of the Kabbalah, at seeing a doctrine so logical, so simple, and at the same time so absolute. The necessary union of ideas and signs, the consecration of the most fundamental realities by the primitive characters, the trinity of words, letters, and numbers. A philosophy simple as the alphabet, profound and infinite as the word. Theorems more complete and luminous than those of Pythagoras. A theology summed up by counting on one's fingers, an infinite which can be held in the hollow of an infant's hand, 10 ciphers and 22 letters, a triangle, a square, and a circle. These are all the elements of the Kabbalah. And for anyone who's followed my work, this stuff is simple. You know, it's simple mathematics hidden in plain sight. And I do recommend anyone pick up this book. There's a lot of information in here. And, you know, it's big pages, big print or small print. It's just packed with stuff. But later in that chapter, he gets into Gematria and introduces the two very simple ciphers in English. And whoops, I meant to keep my page bookmarked. I'll have to find it again. So anyway, I found excerpts from that book on the internet long ago, before I even had the book. And I said, okay, here's something to, okay, the relevance of numbers. Okay, Masonry, Kabbalah. Okay, this is making sense. And, you know, as I did my research, I eventually got this, the Book of Formation, or the Sefer Yetzirah. And the Book of Formation, chapter 1, opening paragraph. I'll just read it to you. In 32 mysterious paths of wisdom did the Lord write. I just want to stop right there. 32, special number. Remember, America equals 32. The nation was established on a date with 32 numerology. The nation's headquarters, Washington, D.C., used to be the Catholic colony controlled by the Jesuits. Now has the headquarters of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. The 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite shares the same motto as the Jesuits. And of course, both these secret societies operate by this Kabbalistic code. But again, in 32 mysterious paths of wisdom did the Lord write, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the living Elohim. In Hebrew, Elohim equals 47. Part of the reason that number is everywhere. And King of the universe, the almighty, merciful, and gracious God. He is great and exalted and eternally dwelling in the height. His name is holy. He is exalted and holy. He created his universe by 3 forms of expression: numbers, letters, and words. So, in Kabbalah, this is everything. Letters, numbers, and words. This is how God operates. And it's clear that this knowledge, which was originally shared so that people could better understand the world, you know, people have taken it and they've said, you know what? I'm going to play God. I'm going to use letters and numbers and words to play God. And that's part of the reason 9/11 happened on 9/11. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. So, Book of Formation, inexpensive book to buy, and you don't have to read far into it to get right to the heart of the matter. So there's that. And another book I read long ago, which I should probably pick up and read again, is Numerology and the Divine Triangle. And it's by the author Faith Giovanni. And then this second name always makes me laugh, the co-author, Dusty Bunker. Because it's like, that's what happened to this knowledge. It just got thrown in this dusty, forgotten place. And seemingly almost nobody knew about it, except for the Cabal. So that's why I've been passionately speaking about it and teaching about it since 2013. I pretty much dropped everything I was doing in my life and have gone full board on this, because I realized this was the golden ticket. This is what the controllers are using. This exposes their madness. And, you know, I thought years ago this would have taken off in the truth community. And I realize it has come a long way. Even things like Q, which I don't like, are spreading the knowledge, which is the one thing I'm thankful about to Q. It's helped this knowledge reach a lot more people. It's too bad it didn't reach more people through me, because I actually teach people a relevant way how to use it rather than get manipulated by it. But still, the point is the knowledge is reaching people. And anyhow, there's a lot of other books, but those are 3 good ones. So Numerology and the Divine Triangle, the Book of Formation, and the Secret Teachings of All Ages. And with that said, what I want to do is just go back over September 11th, because this is really where it all started for me. And to me, still, out of all the terrible things happening in the world, it's September 11th that really needs to be exposed so that everyone knows. And from there, you know, the dominoes can fall. Because I think once, you know, everyone's mind is enlightened to what really happened on September 11th, then everything else, you know, will be a lot easier for people to grasp. So let's go back and talk about September 11th again. what I need to do is get the camera off me and on the desktop. So, things to look into if you don't know. Project for a New American Century. That was a group of what are considered neoconservatives who essentially became the Bush administration after George W. Bush took office. Shortly before Bush took office, they published a document about their plan. And in this document, which anyone can access, they called for a new Pearl Harbor. And with that new Pearl Harbor, they were going to forward this international agenda, essentially wars in the Middle East, targeting Iraq, Afghanistan, the exact places we went after 9/11. And it also talks about a growing population and, the need to control this growing populace in this information age. So essentially building the surveillance state. And their wording was to call for a new Pearl Harbor. After 9/11 happened, several books were put out using the terminology Pearl Harbor. And you might recall that in 2001, on May 25th was the day it was released, the film Pearl Harbor came out. And I'm going to show you something about this. Keep in mind, Pearl Harbor happened on December 7th in history. December 7th. Here, let me just put it up here real quick. Date of Pearl Harbor. December 7th, 1941. And we write that date 12/7. 127. And what buildings fell on September 11th? The two main towers, buildings 1 and 2, and then the building that fell 8 hours later in the day. 7 buildings, 1, 2, and 7 fell. And they called this the new Pearl Harbor. Now check this out. Pearl Harbor film release date, May 25th, 2001. Now look at this. May 25th, 2001 to September 11th, 2001, the date of the new Pearl Harbor was a span of 110 days. 110 days. Why does that matter? It's because buildings 1 and 2 were 110 stories tall. Just in case you don't know, how tall were buildings 1 and 2 World Trade Center? Let's see if that pulls it up. Let's see. I thought this would come up right away. But they were definitely 110 stories tall. There they are. So they were 110 stories tall. Let me see if this still comes up. How tall was Building 7? Maybe I should say World Trade Center Building 7. Wikipedia is changing all their information. Okay. Building 7 was 47 floors tall, and each floor was 47,000 square feet. But here's what I want to show you. And I just want to put up the two ciphers that Manly P. Hall introduced, the alphabetic order and the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. The name Osama bin Laden sums to 110, just like how World Trade Centers 1 and 2 were 110 stories. And Building 7, which fell 8 hours later, was 47 floors tall, each floor 47,000 square feet. So you just got to say, I mean, what are the odds of that? And then also that from the release of Pearl Harbor, the film, that year, to what they called the new Pearl Harbor was 110 days. It was also 15 weeks and 5 days. I'll save that for later. But anyway, 110. 110. And think about what both of these numbers are in terms of numerology. They're 11. 11. New York was the 11th state. The World Trade Centers look like giant 11s. The first plane to reportedly hit the building was flight AA-11. Of course, AA is 11. 11 is the master number in numerology. Very special number to the occult, 11. the 11th day of the 9th month. So there was that aspect. What Manly P. Hall said was the most pure cipher was the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. That's the one he suggests to use. Notice if you write out September 11th, it sums to 77. Notice if you write out World Trade Center, it sums to 77. And the Pentagon was supposedly hit by Flight 77. They say Flight 77 took off at 8:20 and crashed at 9:37, which is exactly 77 minutes later. The Pentagon's 77 feet tall. It's on the 77th meridian, known as the American meridian. You have to say, even without, you know, the Gematria encoding, what are the odds of all those 77s? But then you apply this code and you say, wow, World Trade Center 77, September 11th, 77. Mark Passio, who is the former Satanist and now essentially the occult exposer, he teaches that 77 is the number of the wizard, the number of the spellcaster, the number of the sorcerer. And think about the film The Wizard of Oz. Notice how it equals 77. Just days ago on July 7th, Bill Gates did an interview and referred to Steve Jobs as a wizard. And when I learned about this, it really started to make me think about the word spell. You know, casting spells, magic, how we use spell to write. And the reason I started to think about that is because I had always described to anyone who was awake how it seemed that everyone in this nation was under a spell when it came to September 11th in truth, because they couldn't see what was obvious. They couldn't see that that date was a terrible lie, you know, blamed on a man in a cave across the world, a story that made no sense, a story as believable as a man living inside of a giant fish, which is another story people believe. Believe, that word with lie in the middle. So anyhow, all of those 77s. And then the other big coincidence with the Pentagon is, what date did construction begin on the Pentagon? And again, I don't advocate for asking questions to Google and just accepting the answer, but I just know from research, even before Google existed, or probably around the time Google existed, since the days after September 11th, I did learn that the Pentagon construction began on September 11th in 1941, which was also the year of Pearl Harbor, wasn't it? And you know what? Something I've never looked up in history, I just have to do it in real time. I just got to check. I have actually never looked at how many days it was from the construction of the Pentagon to Pearl Harbor that year. Could be interesting. Whoops, I got the wrong year there. 88 days, huh? 2 months and 27 days as well. There's things I could say about that. I'm going to save it for another time. That's interesting. Those numbers have to do with cycles and circles and geometry. And really, that's what this is, right? Pearl Harbor, New Pearl Harbor, Nation's War Department, recreating history. Another thing that's just straightforward about the date September 11th. September 11th leaves 111 days left in the year. 111 days left is what is left on September 11th. And notice what New York equals. 111. Again, 11, 1, 111, all rep digits of 1. Okay, so other points I want to make about September 11th. We covered the Pearl Harbor connection. We covered the stories in the buildings, 110 in buildings 1 and 2, 47 in building 7. The Pearl Harbor movie release date, 110 days from the event. Flight 77. Now I want to talk about the 93 World Trade Center bombing in light of what happened on September 11th. Of course, one of the flights that day was Flight 93. After the towers came down, they called the site Ground Zero. And prior to 9/11, the only definition for Ground Zero was the point above or below ground that an atomic or nuclear bomb detonates. And think about how the World Trade Centers were in Manhattan. Think about the Manhattan Project, which began with developing the atomic bomb. Notice what atomic bomb equals. Atomic bomb equals 93. And in 1993, when Bill Clinton took office, one of the first things he did was he ended the nearly half a century of underground testing of nuclear and atomic weapons. Then shortly after that, February 26th, there was the 93 World Trade Center bombing. And they said that the terrorists, by the way, they blamed it on the blind sheik. If you look up who the 93 World Trade Center bombing was blamed on, they called him the blind sheik. Blind sheik 93. But they said the terrorists, maybe because he was blind, planted the charges the wrong way. They said the charges were supposed to go upwards and they probably would have brought down the towers, but instead the charges were set the wrong way, so they made massive craters in the ground. And for that reason, they had to work months after patching up the holes. But think about what they could have been doing. Could they not have been planting charges on a countdown for September 11, 2001? You know, 50 years of underground testing of powerful explosives. And for what purpose? I'm guessing one of those purposes was for their planned false flag of 9/11. Because those buildings did turn to dust. There was a lot of force to crumble those massive structures into dust. And you can see that force as they come down. The building is exploding outwards. You know, they make it seem like it just collapsed. No, that building was turned to dust. And then they called it Ground Zero to put it in everybody's face. And for years, I just looked at all these facts, but I didn't have this piece of the code with letters and numbers. Now I just look and I say, look at how nicely it all goes together. It just fits together way too perfectly. And what's the building there now to commemorate? One World Trade Center. And what's that equal? 93. 93. And of course, 93 is a number that symbolizes Saturn. Saturn, very important to the occult. It's the keeper of time. It has to do with judgment. Remember the evangelical, televangelists, they call them, the preachers that came out and said things like 9/11 was punishment from God for not condemning homosexuality, and these types of things were said in the media. Anyway, Saturn, judgment. Very important to the occult. 93 World Trade Center bombing, when it all began. Now, the other piece to consider is just how long the plan was in motion for September 11th. Actually, let me tell you something more about Saturn with regards to the date of the 93 World Trade Center bombing. It was February 26th. There's another cipher outside of the base ciphers. And I first learned of this cipher through the website Gematrix, Gematrix.org. This was the first online Gematria calendar I came across. And I'll just use this cipher real quick. What it does is something called Jewish Gematria, which is based on the old Latin order of the English letters of the alphabet. And then this cipher right here, which is English Gematria, is also known as Sumerian Gematria. This is just multiplying each letter times 6. So you see that it says P is 96. P is the 16th letter of the alphabet. So 16 times 6 is 96. It says L 72. L is the 12th letter. 12 times 6 is 72. A, the first letter, is 6. 1 times 6, so on. So that's what this cipher is in the middle. And then the cipher down here is just the alphabetic order. So notice, planet with the alphabetic order equals 68, right? In 1968, that's when the plan went into motion for the World Trade Centers. World Trade Center construction began in 68. 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. And if you look up, the first 911 call was made on the 47th day of the year, February 16th. 47, that special number. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But 68, 911 made the national emergency dialing code. World Trade Center construction began. George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. And by the way, Bush's birthday is July 6th. Every year from his birthday to September 11th is a span of 68 days. I'll just show you this so you don't have to believe me. George W. Bush birthday, July 6th. Which happens to be the 187th day of the year. George Washington equals 187. Washington, D.C. equals 187. Special number there. Ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry equals 187. But from his birthday, July 6th, to September 11th, every single year, here, we'll just do 1941. He wasn't even quite born yet, but it won't matter. Just every year, it's the same thing. Span of 68 days. Again, 68. He graduates from Yale and Skull and Bones. World Trade Center construction begins. 911 made the national emergency dialing code. The New York Jets, that was the season they won their only Super Bowl. Think about it. If you missed my work from November 11th, 2018, George W. Bush got a medal that day. There were all sorts of tributes to 9/11 and the number 68. I did a collage video on that. It was amazing. And the reason they did it on 11/11, well, first of all, September 11th had a lot to do with 11, as we talked about. But think about how on the old Julian calendar, you know, November would have been 2 months earlier. It would have been the 9th month. So 11/11 is kind of like 9/11 on the Gregorian calendar. On that day, there were so many different 68 rituals. Even the Aerosmith musician collapsed on stage at age 68. Lost track of how many stories there was. Anthony Bourdain, who died on June 8th earlier that year, his last episode of Parts Unknown aired. Huge ritual with that. And it was set in New York City, of course. But this 68 number, there's also a relevance to it beyond planet. But hold on, I need to come back to the planet part. Do you see how planet's 226 in Jewish gematria? Again, the 93 World Trade Center bombing on February 26, 226. Planet, Saturn, time, judgment, occult knowledge, executed by a code. You know, these numbers are a language. Saturn is the god of the Old Testament, which Kabbalah is highly related to. Genesis 3:22 is a direct tribute to Kabbalah. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of Gematrix because this calculator is a lot more fluid. I want to type in false flag and show you something. In this Jewish cipher, which is the same one at Gematrix, look, I'll just type planet in here, same thing. But if you type in false flag, it's 156. And why does that matter? Why does that matter? Look at the number 911. It is the 156th prime number. 911 is the 156th prime. Think about it. A false flag on 911. Now, the other thing is, just using the English alphabetic order, if you write out 33, it sums to 156. And from 1968, when the plan went into motion, to 2001 was 33 years later. 33. And what happens when you write out false flag? Again, using the most pure cipher, it's 33. Isn't that interesting? Another thing that's interesting is Tisha B'Av, which is the day to remember the destruction of the 2 temples. Tisha B'Av in Jewish gematria is 9/11. What are the odds of that? If you look up what day Tisha B'Av was in 2001, it was 44 days before September 11th. 44 is a number that's associated with destruction. And the World Trade Centers opened in history. They opened their doors April 4th, 1973, when construction was complete. That means that the World Trade Centers lasted for 28 years, and 28 is the only number besides 33 when you write out that sums to 156. So, again, to review, so far we've covered the heights of buildings 1 and 2, the relationship to Pearl Harbor, the actual Pearl Harbor, also the release of the film Pearl Harbor that year, how the heights of the building related to the name Osama bin Laden, who was blamed for the attack. We talked about Flight 77 in the Pentagon. We talked about the 93 World Trade Center bombing, Ground Zero in the Manhattan Project. I want to talk a little bit about Osama bin Laden, his death, and also his father's death. And we're actually going to start with his father's death. Do you know how Osama bin Laden's father reportedly died? If you don't, he reportedly died in a plane crash. But now let me show you the date. It was September 3rd. Wait, it pulled up Osama bin Laden. Where's his father? His father died September 3rd in the year 1967. I find it weird that some of these searches don't work as well as they used to, and I think part of the reason why is so they don't want people to access this information so quickly because, you know, I still have videos floating around showing this stuff. Let me see. How did Osama bin Laden's father die? Aviation accident and incident. Okay. There it is. So he died the 3rd day of September 1967. September 3rd, 9/3 as we write it in the US. 9/3, like the 93 World Trade Center bombing, like Flight 93, like everything we just talked about. But here's the other kicker about September 3rd. Here's the big kicker right here. Do you see how many days September 3rd leaves in the year? 119 days. And think about how the majority of the world writes the date September 11th. 11/9, like 119. Two of the biggest events in the 20th century were the collapse of the Berlin Wall on November 9th and September 11th, 2001. Well, I guess September 11th was slightly into the next century, but two of the biggest events in that 100-year period of time, both 119 dates. Very special number. And both dates that were meant to capture the mind's eye of the masses. All-seeing eye is 119. You know, on the date of September 11th, the dancing Israelis were arrested in New Jersey. Notice Orthodox is 119, so is Star of David, the flag of Israel, and they were sent back to Israel, and they went on live television over there and said they were in 9/11. They were in New Jersey to document the attacks that day, meaning they had foreknowledge. And with regards to New Jersey, if you run the alphabetic order in reverse, notice New Jersey's 119 and 47. So that's the other half of this code, the alphabetic order in reverse. But with regards to 119, I want to talk more about that number. I want to go back and look at the date Osama bin Laden died. Date Osama bin Laden died, which was May 2nd, 2011, of course. Of course he dies in the 11 year. But May 2nd, funny day. Funny day to die. The word terrorist equals 52. Notice it also equals 142. They say the 9/11 attack lasted an hour, or excuse me, they did say it lasted an hour and 42 minutes. Another way to say it is 102 minutes. There's a film called 102 Minutes That Changed America. And again, that's an hour and 42. And if you want to use Jewish gematria, guess what Al-Qaeda equals? Al-Qaeda equals 102. September 11th, 2001 happened on a date with 41 numerology as well. But anyhow, Osama bin Laden dies on May 2nd, 5-2, right? Terrorist is 52, but it's a lot better than that. Think about who the president was when Osama died. Obama. And what was Obama's middle name? Hussein. And what did cable news do? It confused the American people and made them think that Saddam Hussein, as well as Osama bin Laden, were responsible for the 9/11 attacks, especially if you watched Fox News. Fox News purposefully associated Saddam Hussein more than any other cable news network. The other cable news networks cooperated as well. Fox took it to a new level. But look at this. Obama was inaugurated January 20th, 2009. And Osama died May 2nd, 2011. Remember, they gave us that nice picture of his back? Said, here's the proof, America. We know you'll believe anything. Look at this. From inauguration day of Obama to the death of Osama was 119 weeks. 119. The odds of these things all being coincidental are improbable. Improbable. And I want to show you something here. We're going to bring up what we call the 4 base ciphers, the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology, and then the reverse alphabetic order, just making Z1, counting back to A is 26. And then the last cipher is the reverse alphabetic order with the rules of numerology, just making each letter a single-digit number. So what I want you to see is the relationship between all of these words. Gematria, 52. Kabbalah, 52. Again, Gematria is the practice of coding numbers into words, which comes from Kabbalah, as we covered at the beginning. Kabbalah states that God created the world with letters, numbers, and words. That term, the Cabal, which means the secret political faction, just like how we learned. Kabbalah is so important to the secret society Freemasonry, which has a lot of relevance in this nation and elsewhere. The Cabal equals 52. Notice government is 52. Notice authority is 52. The physical model for Kabbalah is the tree of life, which is 52. And the Jewish name for Kabbalah, or the tree of life, is the Etz HaChaim, which is also 52. Notice Etz HaChaim is also 119. And Mark Passio has an old presentation about how the 2 towers that crashed on September 11th symbolized the 2 pillars in the tree of life. You know, also a lot like the 2 pillars in the Masonic Arch. But isn't it interesting how Etz HaChaim, the Jewish word for the tree of life, is 119? That's something that Mark Passio doesn't know. But I know that his teaching's right on point about how 9/11 was a giant Kabbalah ritual. It absolutely was. By the way, I got to sneak something in real quick that I forgot to cover. When I was talking earlier about 1968 in the World Trade Centers, notice the word terror is 68. And that became the Bush administration's favorite word after 9/11. Terror, terror, terror. Again, don't forget it's a span of 68 days from Bush's birthday to 9/11 every single year. Notice terror is also 41, just like how 9/11 happened on a date with 41 numerology. And don't ever forget that the original definition of terrorism is government by intimidation, which is exactly what we have. And that's exactly what 9/11 was. 100%. Also, don't forget this either. Papa Bush, Shrub the First, his father was the head of the CIA. And don't forget that after the assassination of JFK, which was another ritual by these very similar numbers, the president who created the CIA. He said it needed to be gutted and turned into nothing more than an information gathering service. And why do you think he said that? Obviously, he saw that it had become a danger to the American people. Okay, so we've covered all of the relevant pieces of September 11th. And the next thing I want to talk about is who is responsible for this. People are often saying, who are they? Who are they? That question is answered by this code. And let me get my calculator back up here. And I just want to go to the two most simple ciphers, the ones I used for years that I learned about from Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. Notice the word they sums to 58. 58. Who are they? Freemasonry, with the alphabetic order and rules numerology, is 58. Rosicrucian. Freemasonry was born out of the Rosicrucian order. Rosicrucian is 58. Secret Society is 58. Very special number. George W. Bush, 58. If you look, George W. Bush won with 271 electoral votes after his brother state came through. Notice 271 is the 58th prime number. Donald Trump, who just won the election, more like the selection, don't forget that he announced he was running from the 58-story Trump Tower. He hired the 58-year-old Steve Ray for Inauguration Day. Hillary put out a book called What Happened After She Lost? 58. When Donald Trump was called as the winner, he was at 271 electoral votes. He ended up getting more, but when they called it in his favor, he was at 271. Don't forget the Suddenly Susan episode from years ago, which talks about Trump as the president, which came out on May 8th, 5-8. This code answers who they are. If you've seen the film They Live, the motto in that film is they live, we sleep. Notice that motto, sums to 74. If you've never seen that film, it's about a man who puts on glasses. And when he puts on those glasses, he can see things that he cannot typically see. And most of the things he sees are in things that are written, billboards, news stories, papers, magazines. You ever notice in the film A Beautiful Mind, they make him look crazy, but what is he doing in that film? He's showing how there's secret codes in papers and magazines that are part of a conspiracy against the people of the nation. You use this knowledge, you can see that that actually is really going on. But notice, let me make sure I'm not off air. All right, we're still going. Notice, with the alphabetic order, Gematria sums to 74. English sums to 74. This is occult knowledge, occult 74. It's very much related to tarot cards, tarot 74. The code is very much Jewish. Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism traditionally. Jewish is 74. Masonic is 74. Holiday is 74. Look at Independence Day in the most pure cipher, the alphabetic order with the rules numerology, 74. When the World Trade Centers came crashing down, they came crashing down on the 74th meridian. There was a great deal of energy, 74 involved. And it does seem that there is some sort of, subliminal power to this, some sort of subtle energy. There's a reason that they use this knowledge and that they spend so much time encoding things. Spell casting. Kabbalah, there's a dark half to it too, called the Klippoth, which is about casting spells and having power over people and using people and hurting people. But notice energy 74, so was weapon, so was nuclear. Talked about how in recent days there was the big deal about the death of the 9/11 first responder after he was on TV with Jon Stewart. I talked about how he died 74 days from the anniversary of September 11th. Don't forget there's a song out there called Gematria, the killing name, killing 74. Don't forget about how 3 of the first 5 U.S. presidents died on July 4th. But anyhow, these numbers, they're not arbitrary. Again, they're a language, and they're used ritualistically. So I was saying how this code speaks to who they, 58, are, a number that gets used again and again as well. And here, let me just pause real quick. I just want to see what this text message is, just in case it's somebody notifying me. It's somebody who's said, have you ever looked into the number of days from Pearl Harbor to September 11th? They texted me the screenshot. I see it's 717 months. 59 years. There's some interesting things there. I'm going to think more about this later. I'd actually never looked into that before. That's a good thought. But anyway, who are they? So, Masonry. Their symbol, the compass set at 47 degrees, the instruments of geometry around the capital G, the compass, the square. Gematria means geometry in language. Geometry in language. And look at this. When you think of geometry, you think of pi. Anyone who's taken geometry class remembers calculating pi and the significance of pi for finding measurements relating to circles. The mathematical shorthand for pi is to divide 22 by 7. And I'll just do this here on the calculator. 22 divided by 7 gives you 3.14, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Look at what happens when you write out 22 divided by 7. 314, just using the alphabetic order. 314 like pi. And notice what happens when you write out 360, the degrees in a circle. 227, 22 divided by 7. Remember how I was showing earlier that from September 11th, 1941 to Pearl Harbor Day was 2 months and 27 days? Cycles, circles. Here's what else. If you mirror the alphabetic order in reverse and you just write out geometry, notice it sums to 108 with the alphabetic order and also 108 with the reverse alphabetic order. There's not a lot of words that are the same forwards and backwards. The reason that matters is because of where the significance of 108 comes from. 108 is said to be the number that connects to the distance of the Earth, the sun, and the moon. They say that from the Earth to the sun, it's the diameter of 108 suns side by side. And they also say that the distance across the sun is 108 Earths side by side. Also, from the moon to the Earth is the diameter of 108 moons side by side. This number connects to prayer beads in multiple religions, yoga, sun salutations, and so many other things. 108. But again, Gematria means geometry in language. In sacred geometry, there's the flower of life, which is made up of 61 circles. 61 is a prime number, a very special prime number. Notice the word prime itself is 61. If you read my book, there's so many things encoded in the English language that are tributes to geometry. And you have to ask yourself, is this just all organic? Or did somebody purposefully think about this and craft it to be this way? And to me, the answer is yes. Obviously, somebody did design it this way. It's not an accident. There's a reason the English alphabet was standardized at 26 letters. There's a reason that the spelling for words that we now have are what they are. You have to consider that in the time of the English language, it's had many more letters, less letters, totally different spellings for words. than what has now all been agreed to. It evolved to this point. It was made to be this way. And with regards to the 26 letters, again, the Mason symbol is a tribute to God, the master architect, the master geometer of the world. Instruments of geometry around a G, the first letter in geometry, the first letter in God. Notice the word God, just using the alphabetic order, is 26. In Hebrew, the four-letter name of God, the tetragrammaton, which, by the way, tetragrammaton is 58, number we talked a whole lot about. But the four-letter name of God in Hebrew sums to 26. So God in Hebrew, 26, God in English, 26. Remember, God created the world through numbers, letters, words. And guess what the word letter equals? 26. You see? Not by accident. Again, because it's all been carefully thought out. Now, I want to show you some things about the G. The G. Notice the word Freemason is 42. The word that the Masons use to describe God as an architect, is 42. Not by accident. And in the cipher where you multiply the alphabetic order times 6, G's the seventh letter, 7 times 6 is 42. There's another cipher which takes into account lowercase and uppercase. I'm going to make this G a lowercase on purpose to make the point. This cipher is called Francis Bacon. And here, let me get rid of this real quick. See how in Francis Bacon it says the G's worth 7? If I make it a capital G, though, it's 33. 33. The way this cipher works is lowercase a through Z is 1 through 26, and then uppercase A is 27, uppercase B is 28, uppercase C 29, up all the way up to uppercase Z 52. So essentially, like, you have 1 through 52 like cards in a deck. But capital letters matter. So capital G is 33. Again, a very special number to the Masons. Masonry equals 33. Secrecy equals 33. Most pure cipher, alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. Order's 33. The federal government, it has its headquarters right next to, the Masonic House of the Temple. And of course, DC is named after George Washington, the 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, who has the 333-foot tall shrine built in his honor in Virginia. But federal 33. And think about 9/11, this tribute to Kabbalah, this tribute to this code where the plan went into motion 33 years before the big event. Bush was in office in the House of the Temple. When you go in, there's 2 giant portraits of George Herbert Walker Bush and his son, the 2 presidents, the 2 Skull and Bones members. Skull and Bones, a Masonic order. The alumni are known as Bonesmen. And the singular Bonesman's interesting too, because notice Bonesman's 43. So is Yale 43. So is New Haven, CT, like how you'd write the town Yale's on an envelope. And don't forget, George W. Bush was the 43rd president. His father was the 43rd vice president. His brother was the 43rd governor of Florida. Masonics 43. Even Florida's 43. So again, this is why you want to know the ciphers forwards and backwards. Aren't Yale the Bulldogs? Bulldogs is 43 too. Even their school name's 43, their nickname. And so many schools are. It's not just Yale. You go all throughout the nation and you start to look. You see almost all the public universities have been named this way accordingly. So many things are built around this code. So you don't need to ask who they are anymore. And I do want to be clear, it's not, they just aren't Freemasons. There's other secret societies that are Masonic in nature, Jesuits, Illuminati, Knights Templar. All of these things are related though. But it's very clear to see that the Freemasons, especially the Scottish Rite, who have their headquarters right there in Washington, D.C., the city named after the Scottish Rite Freemason, it's very hard, it's very easy to see how much influence they have. And again, that capital G, who's the first recognized president, even though they really weren't? George, right? George equals 57. And George, the Scottish Rite Freemason, was inaugurated at age 57. Notice Scottish Rite's 57. I forget, what was it? I forget the exact number. 4 of the first 7 presidents, I think, were inaugurated at age 57. Just think about that. What are the odds? What are the odds? So anyway, there's a million more things to talk about, but then again, I have a million, videos to watch. I have a million blog posts. I have a book that's nearly 800 pages long. To me, there's no other knowledge in the truth community that holds nearly as much water as this. You can use this knowledge every single day to see through the lies. How the government's a puppet show, how the media is divisive propaganda. And for the person out there who's saying, yeah, but I already know that, I don't need that. Well, I didn't need this either. I saw what the show was, even before September 11th happened. But the majority of people, it's like they always need more reasoning, more understanding to get their head around what should be obvious. And when you present this information properly, it can open eyes. Just as a lot of people who are here and who follow my work, they give credit to me for waking up. And really, they should give themselves the credit. They're the ones who chose to listen and even take the time to watch. But they say, this work was the catalyst. And at the same time, I do recognize, countless people have come across this work and they've just dismissed it in an instant. But that's just because those people aren't open to the truth. And, there's also a lot of people who said they did brush away my work, but then it came back to them and they said, you know what? This is actually pretty undeniable. So that is the point. And, with regards to the Scottish Rite, just look at who the president is right now, Donald Trump. You see the 165 and the 159 here for Scottish Rite. Donald Trump's born on June 14th, which is the flag's birthday. That's the 165th day of the year. And guess what the name Donald Trump equals? Donald Trump. 159. And then again, just things like this. Since we've been talking about 9/11, Donald Trump's Serta commercial. See if I can pull it up here. Probably should put the word sheep in there. I think he did a couple. But here's this commercial from 2009. Notice he's talking to sheep on pillars, and the sheep have the numbers 9 and 11. What do you think that's a tribute to? If you've never seen this commercial, do watch it. It ends with this sheep looking at the camera and saying, "Where is your dignity?" But Donald Trump talks about being born for the job. This commercial's from 2009. 2009. And he ends by talking to sheep number 9, and he says, "Looking good, number 9, looking good." What's interesting about that is if you add 1 through 9 together, it sums to 45, just like how Donald Trump became the 45th president-elect. And, of course, he was announced as the 45th president-elect in the early hours of November 9th, the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And notice Berlin Wall is 45. It's also got that geometry thing. Geometry is 108 and 45. Cycles, circles. You see the 63 over here? 2016 is the 63rd triangular number. That means if you add 1 through 63 together, it equals 2016. And if you use this website, Gematria.com, and you go to Tools and Number Properties, you can research properties and numbers. So you just type in 2016, click Get Properties. I'll show you right here, 63rd triangular. That means if you add 1 through 63, it equals 2016. Trump becomes the president-elect in 2016. And look at what Serta is. Serta 63. Did that ad for Serta in 2009. See how that goes? And then what's his vice president, Mike Pence? How do you think they picked out old Mike Pence? 45-45. See how it goes? Donald Trump was announced as the 43rd fifth president-elect on the 27-year anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Berlin Wall 45, like Ritual, Ritual 27, 27-year anniversary. And I just pointed out how the other day, Wall Street reached 27,000 for the first time 27 days after Trump's birthday. Fall of the Wall, Wall Street, Trump, Trump card, House of Cards, TV show about the presidency, House of Cards. So what I'll do is I'll open up the phone line. If there's anybody out there, I don't want anyone to just call in who regularly calls in every time I do a radio show, a live stream. That's not what I want. If anybody wants to call in who hasn't called in before, or who has a question, or there's something they need clarification on, here, I'll just write the number down on the screen. It's 509-731-0567. I'm going to leave the phone line open here for a minute for anybody who has a question or, you know, something to add. But please don't call in and ask me about something random or with some random decode. That's not what this is for. So if there's anybody out there watching, this is your chance to get your question answered. So 509-731-0567. And I think we got a first-time caller. Caller?
Yo.
Yo.
Hey, I tried to tell my mama about this. She won't believe it.
Well, that's the problem right there. Believe, the word with the lie in the middle. Tell me more about your mom.
They're from one of those American religions that actually are founded by a high-level Mason, and they honestly believe Osama bin Laden did it, and they believe there's other bad countries that are bad and terrorist, and they won't believe, she won't believe that Israel is involved in the 9/11 attack.
Well, I mean, you're telling me why, because she believes. She doesn't want to think or look at evidence. She just wants to believe what she wants to believe, because that's more comfortable for her worldview. How have you presented this to her before? Have you ever showed her the thing about Flight 77 in the Pentagon?
I have not with that. I went into working construction just because I wanted to know for myself, and I know after working as an electrician, there's no way you could collapse a structural steel building that is welded 100% together. It's impossible. It's all welded together.
Exactly. It's scientifically impossible, which I understood the day it happened. And I thought, I don't even know why we're teaching science anymore in this nation if nobody can see through 9/11. And I don't know how any science teacher has a job. And I don't know why every scientist in the world isn't questioning and speaking out about this obvious lie. So, yeah.
Thanks so much for your show. And just to end on that, I went through the educational prison complex, which is what school is. But I did have about one or two geography teachers who had the balls to tell me about the Federal Reserve. And I also remember the day of 9/11, the report about the Israeli agents that were apprehended in a truck. And I've learned later that there was a group that was apprehended by actual firefighters. So I don't know. Anyone who doesn't want to agree with that, I just got to say, how do you like them apples? And have a great day. All
right. Well, next time you call me back, let me know how teaching your mom about Flight 77 went over. So appreciate the call, man.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
you take care.
Much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Caller?
Hi. Thank you for taking my phone call. I'm a new follower of your work, and I do have a question.
Please.
Okay. And my question is, I know you talk a lot about the Jews, and when you come across, you sound, anti-Semitic, but you say that, they're the Freemasons, or they're part of the Freemasons. And I was born and raised Jewish, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm not a Freemason, like how this all fits in. Is my religion a made-up religion by the Freemasons? Is that what you're saying? Or I'm a little confused.
Well, Judaism predates Freemasonry by a lot, but Kabbalah has largely been adopted into Jewish culture, Jewish mysticism, and Freemasonry is very much based in Kabbalah. And Freemasonry also has a large presence of Jews in it, especially the Scottish Rite, which is considered to be the most Jewish branch. So, you know, again, to be clear, I'm not attacking Jews or saying all Jews are responsible. Many Jews are completely ignorant of all this, and not all Jews are even aware of Kabbalah. But at the same time, it's very clear that there's very much a Jewish element to the wrongdoing that's going on in the world. Case in point, September 11th, the dancing Israelis in New Jersey with foreknowledge, and also Ehud Barak, the leader of Israel at the time, telling the United States of America to declare a war on terrorism and told us to attack the exact places we did. So that shows that that nation, which isn't all Jews, had an agenda and had something to do with the attacks at the very least. Do you think that's fair to say?
I mean, I follow you, and I'm like, I understand the numbers. I'm just trying to figure out, with the Jewish religion, I understand that, the connection to the Freemasons and their numbers, and, a lot of them maybe have, the Jewish background or using the Jewish, religion to, carry out with the Kabbalah, their agenda. But I'm just trying to try and figure out, because is this Zach, or is this someone who works with him?
I'm Zach. Here, I'll switch the camera over to me. It's me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I hear my voice online. Okay. Because basically, I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm still just really confused about how religion plays into all this. I've seen some of your past, broadcast where you talk a little bit about religion. And hi there. Hello, I see you now. Okay. But anyway, so you talk about religion, and we're saying how the Freemasons have kind of manipulated religion. So I'm just kind of asking more about that.
Sure. Do you know what Bible verse is Genesis 11:9? Do you know what that's about?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
It's about the Tower of Babel.
Okay.
Does that seem strange to you in light of the date that September 11th happened?
It does. So I see where you're saying where it could be manipulated with the numbers and all that. Okay. So, but that's the Bible.
Well, that's the beginning of the Bible. That's what all the Abrahamic religions are based out of. So. That's
true. So the Old Testament is what you're talking about then.
Right, and the story of Babel, the story about the Tower of Babel is essentially about dividing the people of the world and confusion, and isn't that kind of what came out of September 11th?
That's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. So that's like it's like something that I believed for so long. I was raised to believe this religion. I'm now finding out that it was all manipulated to get me to think and believe a certain way. And to control me in a certain way.
That's basically what it's all about.
What you're saying?
Isn't that what it's all about? At the end of the day, people who want to control other people, and what's more effective in this world at controlling people than religion, and then after that, government.
That's true. Okay. It's just very interesting stuff. So I'm just trying to, it's hard when you've been taught something all your life. And now you're, finding out that what you've been taught may not be actually true. It's just, it's mind blowing, and I'm sure it's mind blowing to a lot of your listeners here too. Like, it's like, wow, this is just like amazing how all this has come together, and just very scary. And one last thing is, I just sent my daughter off to college in LA. And I'm very concerned about all your talk about August 11th.
Don't worry.
So,
I wouldn't worry.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry. I don't mean to scare people with that. My whole point with the whole August 11th thing, and I think it's already served its purpose, even though August 11th hasn't come around. I just put down at the beginning of the year, or September 2018, I showed how they encoded this story with this number. They connected it to the prophecy of the temples, the coming Jewish Messiah. And I said, look at that. The number they're encoding, 118, happens to be the day that Tisha B'Av falls on next year, 11/8, August 11th. And I said, plus that's also the Muslim day of sacrifice. It's also the time of the Hajj. So I said that'd be the perfect day to really mess with the people of the world. And I said almost every year on Tisha B'Av, there's some tragedy in the news. Just like last year, it was in Toronto on July 22nd, which was the second day of Tisha B'Av. There was a mass shooting. The day before that, there was a situation in Los Angeles with a hostage situation in a grocery store. Almost every year on Tisha B'Av, there's these tragedies in the news. And again, it's the Jewish day of tragedy and remembrance. So, but the thing is, like I always say, even if they are going to do something really awful that day, which remains to be seen, you know, you'd have to be in a very specific spot to be physically impacted. Just like 9/11. I mean, almost everybody in the world lived through 9/11, unless you happen to be in the World Trade Centers and where the explosions went off. So, you know, it's not worth panicking and freaking out. And, you know, it's just my point in this knowledge is so that people can see how the cabal operates and how they work by this code. You know, it's just like when the Vegas shooting happened. All that year prior to the Vegas shooting, I didn't know that there was going to be a shooting in Vegas, but I told people to circle that weekend. I said, just watch. We might see the biggest false flag in the U.S. since 9/11. And my research that year talked about how Yom Kippur lined up. Because, it's again, I'm not being anti-Semitic. I just figured out that this is how it works. All of these major events are synced up with the Hebrew calendar. Yom Kippur, as you know, is the most important holy day in the Jewish year, and it's about atonement for your sins. And that year it fell on the day leaving 93 days left in the year, which is the number that symbolizes Saturn, which is a very important number to Israel's history as well. But Saturn has to do with judgment. And lo and behold, what happens? Sin City gets shot up. So I said, oh, perfect. Las Vegas, Sin City. I see why they chose this city. But it really did end up being the biggest false flag in the nation since 9/11. And that's what I'd been talking about all year. But again, I mean, almost everybody lived through that. So it wasn't worth panicking about that either. My whole point in doing this is just to get people ahead of the curve so that they can see, you know, how these rituals are carried out.
Sure. There's someone else online who actually said that what the numbers are leading to, and you've mentioned it too, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco may be, you know, hit by an earthquake.
So, okay, here's the other thing I want to say. So when I started this, San Francisco actually wasn't the first city we looked at. The city that I was most worried about in the world was Jerusalem. And again, because it's Tisha B'Av, it's to remember the destruction of the two temples, and it's connected to the prophecy of the third temple. And right now, the sitting president, Donald Trump, has a shekel on sale in Israel with his head on one side and the third temple on the other. And that coin is to raise money to build the third temple, which is a real agenda item right now in Israel. And earlier this year, we saw on April 15th, we saw Notre Dame burn in France. And on that same day, the headline that most people missed is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a site that we've been talking about as a potential target for August 11th. On that same day that Notre Dame burned, Al-Aqsa Mosque burned. So two religious sites burned that day, Notre Dame, Al-Aqsa Mosque. And that day was 118 days before August 11th. And so still, if there's any city that I was most worried about on August 11th, it's still Jerusalem. The reason we started looking at San Francisco is because the prophecy of the Jewish Messiah is supposed to arrive at the time of the third temple, and the Jewish Messiah is supposed to come through the Golden Gate. And of course, that's in reference to the Golden Gate that is in Jerusalem. But still, when you think of Golden Gate, you can't help but think of San Francisco. And because we were talking about that, we noticed that the mayor of San Francisco, she's the 45th mayor. She's going to turn 45 years old August 11th. Golden Gate equals 45. Bridge equals 45. In the film Pacific Rim, the Golden Gate Bridge gets destroyed on the date August 11th. We've learned that the final license to build the Golden Gate Bridge was signed off on August 11th in history, plus a number of other things. So, yeah, it is possible that something happens there that day, but still, the primary location for that day that I'm really watching is Jerusalem.
Okay, because someone else online was saying that there are other numbers that match up, that if there is a big earthquake in San Francisco, that it would go down the San Andreas fault line along the coast, and there's 2 nuclear power plants along the coast, and that's where I was getting concerned, that if these nuclear power plants blow up, that can be extremely devastating, And,
of course.
I didn't want... And I didn't want my daughter in that state when all this is going on.
Of course. And okay, so here's the other thing I'll say. Like, I don't think that anybody should live in fear because they're awake. But the reality is that the people who rule over us, they are crazy. And there is something in the world that exists called the Georgia Guidestones, where the first rule on there is to limit the Earth's population to 500 million. And it is possible that someday they do something so devastating to us where you don't want to be in California and you probably don't want to be in 1,000 other places either. But, I mean, you can't live in fear and worry and think like that. I mean, all you can do in the meantime is just spread the knowledge of what's going on in this world so that this cabal can be overthrown. And, I mean, that's just the way you have to be about it. You can't live in fear, because if you're living in fear, you might as well just turn it off, because you've defeated the purpose of being awake. So.
Yeah. Well, like from all the numbers and from doing my research and listening to you, I feel like a strong feeling that something is going to happen that day. And there is the possibility that something can happen in California. And just for my own precaution, instead of living in fear, just maybe I feel better just sending her home that weekend.
Sure.
As precaution.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because God forbid something does happen, I'd be like, oh my God, I kind of had a awareness that something may happen and I didn't do anything. So it just that not living in any fear, and just, I think awareness is power, and by knowing, more, becoming more aware with the numbers and gematria and how the world operates, or the people controlling the world operate, it gives me, sense of awareness where I feel maybe I'll be less manipulated, in my life, by, all this stuff, that's the headlines and everything else that they do. So,
sure. Well, better safe than sorry. And I suppose that's not a bad idea. So yeah, I guess that's a good way to be a mom, and just to be safe. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you've been doing. I appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. You have a good rest of your day. Thanks for calling in.
Okay, you too.
Right,
thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right. A lot of people have been trying to call in, realize this is a cell phone. It's not a call board, so I can only take one call at a time. But the line is back open if anybody else wants to phone in. And again, something I pointed out during that phone call is Genesis 11:9 about the Tower of Babel. And I just said, what are the odds? Caller?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
You're on.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about Humpty Dumpty and, the fall of the wall and that sort of thing. But what do you think about the time frame? Do you think he's a one-term president, or, in other words, would this happen at the end of his first term, or do you think he's going to run a second term?
Okay, so here's 2 big clues we've been given. When he first took office, there was a lot of comparisons between him and Richard Nixon and him and John F. Kennedy through the media. And both of them were one-term presidents. There's also the Simpsons, who predicted him to be president. They predicted his presidency would be a disaster, and he'd be followed by the first woman. So I think there is a possibility that he's a one-term president. But then the other thing that I always think about is just the fact that his name equals 88. And I'm like, his name equals 88. And Donald J. Trump even sums to 888. And I'm like, is that telling you right there that he's an 8-year president? So I mean, it remains to be seen, but I would not be surprised if he was just a one-term president. That was my initial thought from the earliest days of him taking the White House and all the stories linking him to Nixon and whatnot. So,
what about Hoover? Have you compared to Hoover?
Hoover, have I compared him to Hoover?
In other words, Hoover was, of course, a one-term right before the crash of '29.
Right. I should do that. I have not actually done that. That's a good thought. So I'll look into that.
And then, as far as the numbers lining up, what numbers would you be looking for to recur? In circles, which would maybe indicate that such a decline is imminent.
Well, I'd encourage you to go back and watch the videos. I encourage you to go back and watch the videos that I put out on Wall Street and market collapses in history last October 2018. The number that shows up all throughout history with the market collapse is 63. And I just talked a little bit ago about 63, how Berlin Wall's 63 and CERTA's 63. And 2016 is the 63rd triangular number, the year he became president-elect, the same year Quaden was running that Humpty Dumpty ad, falling off the wall. So I'm guessing that whenever they do tank the market, it'll probably be on a date with 63 numerology. And if I'm not mistaken, here, let me just double check real quick. I believe Wall Street's 63 too. Yeah, it is. Wall Street's also 63. So
those numbers hitting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Were those numbers hitting before that, that economist, when was that? October.
Yeah, they were. And they were after, too. There was a date I predicted. I said, watch, the market will probably have a bad day on this day. And it was a 63 day, and it ended up having a pretty bad day. I think it was like a negative, I forget, 400 day or something. So I'm pretty sure, though, whatever day they take the market, it'll be a date with 63 numerology. So I could go to town on that. I could start, and I imagine it'll be in the fall too, because when else would the market fall besides the fall? But yeah, we can do some more work on that. So when will it come?
You ask when that could be, and then of course you talk about August 11th, and why not? That weekend.
Well, that could be I mean, these things don't just happen in a day, right? There's usually a series of events that build up to it. But yeah, that could cause a major quake in the market, but it might not totally tank that day. So the fall would be what? The fall starts September 21st. Is that the first day of fall? So month and a half later. I'll start thinking about that more, because that is definitely something they have planned for us. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So, yeah, I'll look more into that.
They would fit more the one-termer.
Say that?
If that were to occur, wouldn't that make more sense to happen if he's a one-term president?
Sure it would. Sure it would. I'll remind people that when Donald Trump was campaigning, he said what a lousy president what George W. Bush was, because there was a major act of terrorism under his watch. And, if something happens under his watch, they'll definitely be running that footage again and, making him look like quite the hypocrite. So, yeah, you're right.
Okay, thanks.
All right, take care. Thanks for the call. Caller?
Hey. Yeah, I was just I love your work. It's the best. And I've been thinking that I think everybody that listening here understands that we're being deceived, and we're being deceived in a very complex way. And it's interesting to know that and analyze that, and we can use this information to predict or understand what happens as our days go on. But what I ask is, what are we being distracted from?
That we're enslaved, man. That we're enslaved. That we're being distracted from our reality.
But what is the end game? Like, why are we forced into these Abrahamic religions and forced to diagnose all this stuff.
I think it's all about power and control, man. Power, control, influence.
Absolutely. I agree. Power and control and distraction. So the end game, you know what I think, and I want to get this out here. I think that there is a dramatic change that's imminent. That's why we can see everything escalating in terms of politics and religion. And as a group, we all look at these structures and we can see that they're failing. So now that we all understand that they're failing, because look at our leaders, look at our religions with the infestation and the corruption. So wouldn't you say that we're primed for change? And I would argue that these people have change in mind, so that we're all willing to accept this change into what we all know is coming, you know, like a global governance, a global religion, right? All that. And furthermore, I want to say that we should keep in mind the idea of like what the myths have taught us, and what the ancient people that got blasted by the deluge and all that. Like, people should look into the Thunderbolts project and the electric universe theory, because in order to know where we're going, we should know where we came from. You know, and I hate to be like rhythmic about it or make like I'm making a rap, but honestly, it's true, you know? So, there's that, and it's very significant. Like, why are we all taught mythology? And it's like seemingly meaningless when we're balancing that against algebra or geometry or spelling or American history. Let's just play along. But we're taught this mythology nonetheless, so that we accept this future thing that's coming down the pipe, right? And I think it has to do largely with a transhumanist movement and a breakaway civilization. Now, I'll leave that for you.
Well, interesting thoughts. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I think that we need to keep in mind the end game and why the fuck this massive distraction is taking place. Like, what aren't we supposed to be thinking about? That's all.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. The line's back open. Again, I can only take one call at a time, so early bird gets the worm. But, yeah, sometimes people say, well, what's the end game and where are we going? I kind of feel like we're in the end game, and it's to keep us in this game. But I think just with the growing population and ever-increasing technology, they just want to build a tighter grip, a greater surveillance state, and less ways for people to fight back. Because with all this technology, it's a dual-edged sword. There's also people like myself and others out here spreading information, so they don't like that. Caller?
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm calling in from New Zealand, Christchurch. I've been doing a lot of research myself on numbers and stuff, and like you're doing. I don't know if you're actually aware, but on the 2nd of July, we had a eclipse, and at 2:22, it hit its max.
Huh.
The shooting here, when it happened, I'll use keywords and stuff because I know you probably get flagged for this. But
it was at 222 local, right? 222, is that what they said?
What? Say again, sorry?
The eclipse was at 222. Was that a number that was related to the shooting there on March 15th, the 74th day of the year?
No, they kept putting out, like they kept saying that there was three people involved, 2 men and a woman, but when it came down to it, they never told us who the names were, or who the people were that they thought were involved. They just said, oh no, they're not involved now, that it was just the one guy. But when it happened, I watched the live stream, and the strange thing was at the end of the stream, a song comes on and it says, I am hellfire and I bring you fire. And if you search that song, it's actually it's a devil dressed up, you know, dancing around, saying I am hellfire. But actually, before the shooting happened here, at the end of last year, I think it was in December or something, they had a project they were running here from the military defence system here, the New Zealand defence system, and it was actually called Project Hellfire. And it was where they were training young military men. But if you actually got to see the video of what had happened before they tried to ban it, and you watch this New Zealand defence video online, they're actually doing, it looks just the exact same, like all the writing on his guns, they're all satanic symbols. When he had court here, they tried to push that it was, oh no, don't worry, it was just racist. It was a racist attack. It wasn't racist. It was to divide and conquer us, because the date here, it was on the 15th of March, which is the day of deities, which in Latin means to divide and conquer.
Right.
And that was the date Julius Caesar was assassinated.
Right. For the record, I told everybody to circle that date in October of 2018. I said there'll be another New World Order ritual on that date, the 74th day of the year. They love that number. It was tied to the bomb scares that we were having in the U.S., which was a tribute to the Ides of March. And right after the New Zealand shooting, what was comical here in the U.S. is they had the October bomber. They had him give an apology in court. And I said, you see how they do that? I told you back in October that story was predictive programming for March 15th. And now they have him back in the news right after the shooting. So that's exactly what it is.
Well, when he had his court here, like, I'll be honest, they haven't told us anything more about the guy. The most we ever heard was that week about him. But when he had his court date, there was a picture of him that was going around circulating with him pulling the symbol when he was handcuffed and was standing in the box.
Right.
And everyone was going, the media was trying to push it out, saying that it was racist, that he was pulling a white power symbol. Now listen here, I am an ex-white power. I'm not anymore, but I grew up around it here in New Zealand. That was not a white power symbol. That was a satanic protection symbol. It's also an okay symbol, the 666. It actually means that Satan's given its okay. He's given his blessing. That's what that means. So in other words, that was blessed. That's what that was. It wasn't, and the deities, it was to divide and conquer us, and it's working. Everyone's dividing religiously since then. You know, it's just really sad that people aren't more aware of what's going on, and because we're on the Roman calendar, I think we weren't going off the Roman calendar. I think the full moon was supposed to be the day of that shooting. If that makes sense, like the dates. It's all pretty odd, eh?
Sure. I know everything you're talking about. I have several videos on the New Zealand shooting. I covered everything about that photo. And keep in mind, he's posing between two police officers who are also in a Masonic stance. So you can see that the law enforcement's in on it. But, the thing that really caught my eye about that shooting was the addresses of the two mosques. I don't know if you call them area codes or zip codes over there or what you call them, but both mosques' address end with 8011. And
really?
Yeah. The first one was at 101 Deans Avenue, Rickerton, Christchurch. And then the ending number is 8011. And
well, if you actually look too, the blood lab is just right at the corner there, and it's actually 15 as well. It's 15 something. The blood lab's corner there. Just before the shootings here, I was watching. They were pushing for blood donations, and do you know what their slogan was?
What's that?
Satan doesn't want your soul; he wants your blood. And that was for the Australia and New Zealand blood, our blood branches, and that was their slogan.
Interesting.
And the odd thing was just after the shootings here, I think it was like 2 days after, they kept telling everyone, oh, we need your blood for the shootings. And this is the other weird thing too, is they kept holding back, saying, oh, it was only 49 deaths. And then, 3 days later, they said, oh no, it's actually 50. Well, guess what? I found out that apparently the 50th one was apparently a child that was in the parking lot that they found 3 days after the shooting, which I find really odd. When they closed that place off so tightly, they wouldn't let anyone near it. They had police sitting there 24/7 for about a month. And they missed a kid for 3 days in a parking lot? In the parking lot? I really, really doubt it.
Right.
And then And then within a couple of hours of them releasing that, I got a thing on Netflix saying, Sabrina Witch, new episode, okay? And then I watched the trailer for it, and the trailer said, it said something like, being evil never felt so good, but the way they wrote "so" looked like 50. And I was like, this is a bit weird. And do you know what they were introducing that episode?
What's that?
On Sabrina? The devil.
Of course. Well, you know, another name for the devil and Satan is Lucifer, and that's comes from the King James Bible. Lucifer equals 74, just using the alphabetic order. And what I wanted to say about the Christchurch shooting is the first mosque address was 101. 101 Deans Avenue, Rickerton, Christchurch. And 101 was what was coded all over the bombing story that was a tribute to the Ides of March, which is why we said to look for the date March 15th when it came around. All of these things sum to 101. Rickerton equals 101. Ides of March equals 101. Christian equals 101. A shooting in Christchurch, you know, at 2 mosques. Very easy to understand the symbolism. It's what they've been doing ever since September 11th, dividing the Muslims and the Christians, and all the people of the world, really.
Well,
go ahead.
Did you ever hear about those couple of kids a while back where their mother took them to get investigated about their dad? They said their dad was sexually ritualistic, using them. And do you know what the school was where this abuse was happening in England? It was called Christchurch. And and guess what day the children were abducted while they were being interviewed during all of this?
Not March
9/11.
Oh, 9/11. There you go. 9/11.
Yeah. See? So there's just too many coincidences. And then the other weird thing is I've tracked these kids down. They're in California at the moment with their dad. They were uplifted out of their mother's care. If you find their fake pages, on the boys' page, he goes by, he has this little slogan at the bottom, and it's vegan. Now, I watched all their videos when they were being interviewed, and he talks a lot about his dad lying to his mom about being vegan. Now, when those shootings happened here, there was this guy that was going on all of everybody's pages with this name vegan, trying to upset everyone, saying, "Oh," I even screenshotted all the things he was saying to people, saying like, "Oh, I'm your God, give me your money," just trying to upset people. And it's like, okay, I see what they're doing. They're dividing and conquering everyone, and people need to be more awake.
Indeed, indeed. And that's the tragedy to me, is that more people have not been following my work, because, I mean, if more people were, the word would have been out. Everyone would have already been known to look for March 15th for the next Divide and Conquer event, and people see right through the event right away. I mean, in October, anyone can go back and watch the videos. We were talking about 101, and then sure enough, the mosque that's shot up in the video is the address 101, and Ides of March is 101. The guy's name Brenton. Brenton's 101. Assassin's 101. And then just the fact that it ended.
They could have pushed out 101 Dalmatians when we were kids.
Well, 101's the 26th prime number, and dog equals 26. That's why they did that. But again, the other thing I've been talking about all year.
What year that came out?
Sure. So the other thing that I've been talking about all year is how this will be a bad year for Islam, because the Quran code centered around 19, and chaos represents the number 19, and the word locusts equals 19. If you saw at the beginning of the year, the story was all the locusts in Mecca to start 2019. But the other thing is, I've been saying, watch for the date of August 11th, because that's the Muslim day of sacrifice. It's Tisha B'Av. It's the time of the Hajj. And then you get these 2 mosque shootings. Again, Tisha B'Av, to remember the destruction of 2 temples. So you get 2 mosque shootings that are both in the address area 8011, which isn't too far off from the date August 11th. And the second of those shootings was at the address 223. August 11th, the 223rd day of the year. So, yeah, there could be a whole lot more divide and conquer. But just what you're saying right now about how it's already dividing people and got people fighting, this is exactly what I said the whole plan was, and why to watch out for these numbers in this year. So what you're saying is exactly what I said would happen September of 2018. So.
Well, just food for thought for everyone. Think about this, people. If you cut yourself open and you couldn't see the skin, and you just put a close-up on the insides, we'd all be the same.
That's right. That's right. Well, I appreciate it, friend. Thank you so much for your call. Nice to hear from someone overseas.
Thank you for taking it.
All right, you stay safe. Take care. Caller?
Hello, Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just seeing, my great aunt Florence Henderson was a celebrity. I was just trying to figure out the Gematria of her death because it was really weird how she had just randomly. Florence Henderson? The Brady Bunch mother?
Florence. All right, hold on. Let me pull it up real quick. Florence Henderson. Let me see.
I've been fascinated by your Gematria channel. I've been waking my wife up, Shirley, but she's like, oh my gosh, all these numbers.
I remember this, man. This was all before the Super Bowl, and I was showing how this whole thing was synced up with Tom Brady and the Brady Bunch, and
yeah,
oh my god,
exactly.
Yeah, I did all this at the time. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but now that I'm looking, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the whole Tom Brady riddle. So, here, I'll pull it up real quick in my notes. For people who don't know, if you go to my blog and you search the top left corner, it's like the online encyclopedia of Gematria articles. So let me see here. She died at age 82. New England Patriots is 82. Let me see. I have to go back and go over it all. November 24th leaves 37 days left in the year. Patriots is 37. There's a whole bunch to this thing.
Wow.
What else was it? She died 74 days.
Like a week before.
She died 74 days before the Super Bowl, number that shows up all the time. Masonic killing, NFL credited to Freemasonry. There was more too. So,
if it's too much trouble, I mean, you told me a lot, but
yeah, her death's in my book too.
Okay.
Carol Brady equals 45, like New England. She died in Los Angeles, California, 197, the 45th prime. She died 113 days from Tom Brady's birthday. Number of the Scottish Rite. Again, the NFL is credited to a Scottish Rite Freemason. She died, what is that? She died 82 days from her birthday as well at age 82. And again, New England Patriots is 82. So, yeah, her whole death was just perfectly synced with that Super Bowl that year. And I was already telling people at that time the Patriots would be there, and sure enough, they were. They went on to win the Super Bowl that year. So,
have they ever done a stop winning?
Yeah, I think they're done right now. So,
well, that's good. That's a relief.
Yeah. All right, man.
Well, thank you for what you do, and stay safe, man. All right.
All right, take care. Appreciate the call. Caller.
Zach.
Yeah.
Gilbert Godfrey, is he trolling you, or is this ritual?
Well, I wonder about that. I wonder if somebody else is trolling and maybe somebody understands this code really well and they paid him to do a cameo and uploaded it all on the perfect day. Could be. Yes. But I just wanted to document it anyhow because it's out there, and whoever put him up to that, it just couldn't have been done any more perfectly. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Bye.
Caller?
Hey, Zach, it's Rich from Daily Dose of Gematria. What's up, bro?
Never heard of you before. Who?
Never heard of me, huh?
I'm just joking, man. How's it going?
I know, bro. They called me back up into the hospital after I got released today, so, like, I'm back up in here, but I had to call in and apologize to you and everybody else for the mistake I made, Jack.
What's that?
Well, you know, we've been adding a lot of new people to the page and the chats and the last few days, and I went for a publicity stunt, man, and I got caught. I got burnt. I'm the one that's guilty of hiring Gilbert Godfrey for making that video. I paid him $150 to stay off the Golden Gate Bridge.
I doubt that. Are you serious or are you joking?
Yeah, of course I'm joking.
That's what I thought.
I had to bounce those people clear off the page. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah, I got accused of. I wanted to talk to you about that. Where'd we find that video? But yeah, I got accused of hiring Gilbert Godfrey for cutting that video. I paid him, I guess, $150, and I guess I'm making my money back selling business cards.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. It's fucking hilarious.
Where'd you find that video, bro? That thing, we cut a lot of live streams on that video this morning, about 4 or 5 in the morning, and that's like kind of huge news. And do you think he was trolling us by chance? Like, 'cause maybe famous people see your videos and don't comment on the comments, but maybe he made a video. That's my only speculation. What's your opinion on that?
I guess it's possible. The way I found the video, somebody left it in my comments. So.
Okay. I figured someone probably left it since it's from Instagram. I'm sure you're not doing Instagram. You notice his initials GG is pretty interesting.
Like Golden Gate, right?
Yep. And the 77 with his initials as well, because the other false flag has 77 all over it.
Sure.
So if something does happen to the Golden Gate, we might want to look for like maybe a 77 pattern, possibly.
Well, that number's always hanging around, so.
Yeah, that's true, bro. But yeah, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, here's my thing, bro. We're a big platform. Your community's pretty big, but really on a large scale, your community's not that big. You know, we got 70 to 100,000 people out here combined. With the world, that's not a large number. So who's the only people talking about a riddle with the Golden Gate Bridge? Outside of Zach Hubbard and us, who's talking about the Golden Gate Bridge? Nobody. So where's Gilbert Godfrey? So here's my main question to you, Zach. See, this is what I asked to the admin on the live stream. Say something happens to the Golden Gate Bridge. What does Gilbert Godfrey have to say to himself, to the media or the police? Right? You with me?
Sure.
What's his explanation? See, you don't have one either, you know? If something happened to the bridge, the first person I would ask is Gilbert Godfrey if he has a crystal ball, you know?
Sure.
So, if anyone in the chat has any ideas, I mean, it blew my mind away, you know? And I think it's great that it helps make you even more credible, you know? But I'm confused on that, you know? I'm very confused on that.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll find out in time. But, yeah, I don't know if he did it on his own accord or if somebody put him up to it or what, but it is very interesting. So
it is. The numbers lined up, and, yeah, it's just maybe we should get about 100 or 200 of us and go find Gilbert Godfrey on Twitter and blow him up. And get some answers, because that's what we're Daily Dose of Gematria. You know, we're GematriaEffect.News. We go out and ask questions, you know?
Sure.
So I'll log into my Twitter if anybody else wants to. Let's go blow his ass up and ask him if he's a Zach Hubbard fan or something, you know?
Well, so. He says, like, shout out to Corpse or something like that, or Clorps.
Yeah.
So that could be the anonymous account that paid the cameo to have the video made, but
see, I heard that, but I didn't know what that meant. You know what I mean?
I don't know what it means either. But
the people that accused me of paying Gilbert Godfrey $150 also said that word equals 29, and so does Hubbard, and that's why they were.
Well, that's it. Well, I saw somebody left a comment like that, but do you even know how to spell Clorps? I don't even know how to spell it, so.
I didn't even know what the word means, to be honest. I didn't even, you know what I mean? Just, you know, I'm on medication and sedated and all kinds of shit. But, excuse me. But yeah, I think we need to figure out, yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. And I think we need to do some investigative work and figure out how legitimate this is. I mean, but to me, if they're doing it to troll you, that just makes you relevant, man. So.
All right, man. Well, maybe we'll find out in time. Appreciate the call.
Absolutely, bro.
All right, take care.
Yep.
Yeah, so for people who don't know what he's talking about, I uploaded a video yesterday of Gilbert Godfrey talking about August 11th on the Golden Gate Bridge. And, yeah, I just wanted to document that video was made. Caller?
Hey, Zach.
Hello.
Hi. What is your take on the Bible? I actually have a college degree in Bible studies, and I know it's encoded and that Gematria is based out of the Bible. I know the Catholic Church gave us the Bible, but is there anything else you could shed light on regarding the Bible?
Sure. So here's my take on the Bible. My take on the Bible is that it's this collection of knowledge from the civilizations that came before it, and it's essentially a collage and a recreation of the spiritual history of the past. And it's encoded with all sorts of esoteric knowledge, which most people don't have a clue about. When you were in your Bible study class, did they ever teach you anything about the numerical encoding of the Bible?
Absolutely not. Never heard of it before.
Right, and I imagine most of the teachers there probably don't even know. They're just teaching, you know, what they learned before. So...
Well, have you ever heard of the book called The Bible Code?
Okay, it's on the... I have two of them on the bookshelf behind me, yeah.
Okay, because that has, like, mathematics in it. I read it a long time ago, but it's not really the same thing, I don't think, as Gematria.
No, it's not.
You're familiar with it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I just wanted your take on the Bible because I spent 4.5 years of my life wasted studying it.
Well, it's not wasted. It all amounted to where you are now, so I'm sure you got something out of it.
Right. Yeah, it all worked out good in the end. But anyway, thanks for your take on it. I appreciate it.
All right. You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Yeah,
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Yeah, I think the Bible's full of relevant information, and I also think it's full of, you know, things that aren't right. And it's just like everything in this world. Everything's dualistic, good and bad. So, but I think religion's ultimately here to control and divide us.
What's up,
Caller?
man?
Hey, what's up?
Not much. Just want to comment on that last caller. She brought up the Bible Code. I actually have, I think, the 3rd edition, and I just think that, me personally, I just thought the book was like some more propaganda, or the author was a shield or a gatekeeper, because it's basically trying to blame Osama bin Laden and Barack Obama for whatever, or calling Barack the Antichrist. So that's why I thought it was just propaganda. But I did want to mention, you were talking about the dancing Israelis earlier in the stream. They were Mossad agents, correct?
Well, that's what I would imagine they were. Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading up on just a few minutes ago. I think I seen they were Mossad agents, and they were held in an American jail or in New Jersey for 71 days exactly, and Mossad equals 71. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Right. That is interesting about the 71 days. I didn't realize that. That's a good catch.
Yep. It said they were held for 71 days and they were released back to Israel. And I've been following the live streams and the radio show. Rambo's on to something with that astrology. I just think we should also start doing astrology on the deaths and seeing which times certain people die in the season. Like if they die during July, if they die during cancer season, and then try to look at it like that as well. Because I've been just doing a little research on astrology. Not only is your birth sign important, your death sign is also important as well. So I think we could also narrow down the code if we start looking at it like that as well. That's all I had. Is that?
Yeah, I think you're right on about that. I've always said I got to do more with astrology, but there's only so many hours in a day, and yeah, eventually I'll get better understanding there. But I have been slow to do that. So appreciate it, ma'am.
Yep, no problem, man. Take it easy, man.
All right, take care. Yeah, we're coming up on the anniversary of the moon landing. The moon's ruled by Cancer. You know, moon landing in the time of Cancer. Cancer equals 44, like space, like Armstrong. Cancer's astrological symbol looks like 69. The moon landing in 69. I realize I've been on here for over 2 hours. I got a big project to work on tonight, and then I got to work all day tomorrow, and then I got the radio show tomorrow. So here, I'm going to take this call, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up. Caller? Caller, it sounds like you're in a windstorm. Caller?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well.
Hey, a couple of callers ago, well, a few callers ago, one of the guys was asking you what does it mean about the end time and all that stuff. What's the end game? One of the things I was thinking is that what we're missing is the fact that they already outlined what their end game is in their Talmud and in their protocols of Zion. And all we got to do is just look at what they've written already, because they're doing it in plain sight. 9/11 was in plain sight. Those bombings in 93, that was in plain sight. They told you what they were trying to do. So we're asking the wrong questions because we got all the answers, because they told us what they want to do.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't the end game to control the people of the world?
Say that again.
What is the end game expressed there? Is it to control the people of the world?
You broke up 1 second. I'll say it one more time.
Is the end game to control the people of the world?
I think because I'm at work, I'm getting a bad reception from you.
Is the end game to control the people of the world?
I believe it's more than just to control the people of the world. It's to control the people and the resources.
It's to control the world. Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So
once you got, when you control the resources, then you automatically control the people. Because if you own all the land, you own all the vegetation, basically. And I'll invite everybody to go and study the United States Federal Code of Regulation. All of our government is basically controlled by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they don't tell us this. Anything that grows in the earth is regulated by the Department of Agriculture. That means iron, that means human beings, and they all outline it. I read the entire code, and they outline it and tell you that's what they're doing. But we're so stuck in the sand and worried about some kind of terrorist attack from some Arab that we don't see what's really going on, which is the terrorist is the people who control the money, control the wealth, control the land. Because once they control that, they control the people. They'll print the money for all the people. They'll control how much cost of oil and how much cost of food, because they own the land. Thus they own the world.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I've been saying. Every day is a distraction so that we don't see the enslavement that we're living under. And exactly, yeah, they do control the resources. Essentially, all of us are pretty much eating the majority of the food that we're all getting from the grocery stores coming from, a handful of companies that, yeah, the entire world is essentially being controlled by a very small group of people right now. So, yeah, you're right on, caller. I appreciate it.
And by the way, like the place where I work, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the place where I work, and most of the places of employment, why do they have a human resource department? Why are we called resources? It's not just about commodity. We're natural resources that come from the earth. So sure. They have a department that controls the resources.
Sure.
And all that's governed by the Department of Agriculture. Now, I got a USDA doctor here where I work. We talked about this extensively, and she said, yes, all of the things concerning human beings in America is regulated by the Department of Agriculture.
Right. I don't know if you saw the video I did on
the registry. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Well, I know you're right on.
The birth certificate, and the death certificate. When we die, we're worth just as much dead as we are alive. And people don't know that, because that death certificate is also traded on the stock market, and they're making money off of it. Every time when your loved ones die, they get wealthy off of it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a sick system, man. You're absolutely right. We're looked at as commodities or resources. That's exactly how it is. They stamp a number on us, and they raise us up in their system, and yeah, from life to death. Yeah, we're a financial instrument. Yeah, you're 100% right.
Definitely. Well, that's all I wanted. We just gotta wake up, and the answers are right there in our face, man.
Yeah, they are. You're well spoken. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the call. All right, take care.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll yield and let you go ahead and finish.
I hear everything you're saying. You're coming through. You just can't hear me. Oh, he hung up. Well, he couldn't hear me, but I could hear him. So, yeah, he's right on. I mean, he's saying everything I'm saying. And if you missed the video I did a couple weeks ago on, you know, what really needs to be the political agenda, it has everything to do with our agriculture and our food. That's where it all starts. The fact that they got us all poisoned, addicted to a bad diet, makes us sick. They make a lot of money off the sickness. Hold on. I was going to get off, but we got another caller. Caller?
Political agenda.
Caller, you got to mute your video. Caller, are you on? No, you hung up. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up. We've been going over 2 hours. I'll be back tomorrow night with the radio show. So thanks for tuning in. And if you missed it, be sure to watch this video from the beginning because, you know, the second half has been phone calls, but all the teaching was at the beginning. So I made this for all the people who are new or got questions. And hopefully I answered at least enough of them. Until next time.